Hey everybody, it's me, Ben. You see this shirt? Carolina. I've worn it before. I'm wearing it in reminiscing about the Duke Carolina Final Four. I thought about something though. If you thought the Duke Carolina Final Four was a big deal, just imagine this. Sit back and close your eyes. It's not basketball season, but imagine this unlikely reality. Imagine if it was are you ready? Duke, Carolina, NC State, and Wake Forest Final Four. Imagine if it was Duke, Carolina, NC State, and Wake Forest, an all Tobacco Road Final Four. Just imagine, if you thought the Duke Carolina Final Four was big, imagine that unrealistic Final Four, and the national championship being either Wake Forest versus NC State or Carolina versus, or Carolina imagine the first game being an NC State Wake Final Four and a Duke and Carolina Final Four, a repeat of this year, and then a national championship of either Duke versus State or Carolina versus Wake. And either Carolina Duke or Carolina State, Carolina Wake, Duke Wake, or a Duke State Final Four. Bottom line, an all Tobacco Road Final Four with an all Tobacco Road national championship. Imagine that. It's not going to happen. But just imagine, folks, if that were a reality. North Carolina would be shut down. Imagine that. Unrealistic reality. Imagine, I guess it could happen in theory. Here's how it would have to happen if it did. So, State, Carolina, and Duke would have to be the most dominant teams in the ACC. Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Florida State, Miami, Virginia, and all the rest of them, everyone, Pittsburgh, Notre Dame, all of them would have to be horrible that year. I mean, Clemson, they would all have to be terrible. They would have to play Virginia Tech. They would all have to be the worst teams. State, Carolina, and Duke would have to be the best teams. The best teams. They would have to be the best teams. And so what would have to happen? Well, and Boston College, worse than Boston College or any of them. So Wake Forest, let's talk about how they'd get there. So they'd have to have a good season, right? Like they did this year. But then they'd have to go into the ACC tournament and win it to get in there. So they would have to be good and great. They would have to be like they were in the 90s with Tim Duncan. And Randolph Childress. They'd have to win it with Randolph Childress. They'd have to win the ACC tournament. Okay? And so then, talking about Selection Sunday, Greg Gumbel, Charles Barkley, Clark Kellogg, and Kenny Smith would have to, and the NCAA committee would have to put Wake Forest and State. Wake wins the ACC tournament. State's already in it. They'd have to put them in the opposite brackets. Carolina and Duke would have to be in exactly what they were this year. Each team would have to win 4 games. 4 games to make it to the Final Four. So, okay. In the field of 68, you have all the teams. So Carolina would have to win March Madness. Duke would have to win March Madness. Just think about this year, right? Each team are in the opposite bracket. Then you have Wake and State. Wake Forest and State would have to win 4 games. They had to win early in March Madness. They'd have to beat all the teams, everybody. Everybody else would have to do the chokey dance. Okay, the Kansases, the Kentuckys, the Cinderella teams that year, all of them, they'd all have to be bad. State, Duke, Carolina, and Wake Forest would have to be the dominant 4 in March Madness. Everybody, UCLA, everyone would have to be bad. Everybody in America. Iowa State, the Hawkeyes, Texas, Oklahoma, they'd all have to suck, basically. They would all have to be bad. Good teams, but not great teams. Okay, so then you go to now we're moving on. Wake, State, Carolina, and Duke would be in the Sweet 16. They'd have to win the Sweet 16 outright. They would have to be the 4 16 best. Then they go to the Elite Eight. The brackets, keep in mind, the brackets in March Madness are opposite. Then they would go to the Sweet 16. They'd be Elite Eight, yeah. So there'd be 8 teams left. For example, you might have Kentucky, Kansas, Ohio State. I'm guessing that year. I'm making this up, okay? And you'd have to have maybe Purdue or Gonzaga, okay, as the 4 in 1. Then you'd have to have Wake, Carolina, State, and Duke, okay? And they'd all have to win it, okay? And then, if they do that, they'd be in the Final 4, okay? That's what would have to happen. Will it happen? Unlikely. What's the percent chance? People say 0, but you know what? People think it's unlikely. But you know what? I'm going to predict one of these days it's going to happen. Now, what will that mean for our state, for North Carolina, in March and April? Well, they'd shut down the whole state. The governor, Roy Cooper, would not only make Walmart prices free, or whoever's governor, he or she, the governor, would, if it's a she then, they would shut down basically the whole state of North Carolina. It would be a beautiful thing. And it would mean that North Carolina's shut down. People would get out of work early, okay? They wouldn't have stores and restaurants open except to watch the game at bars. All the restaurants would be shut down. Grocery stores would be operating, yes, but they'd even talk about it. They wouldn't have as many customers, okay? It would be a big deal. Healthcare facilities might still operate because you need them, and pharmacies, but they'd be talking about it. It would be a wild thing. It would be like this, but it would be all Tobacco Road. It would be the most incredible thing in any sport, more so than the Kentucky Derby, Rich Strike winning it. It would be a lot more. It would be bigger than that. I got news for you horse racing fans. Okay, that's my take. Could it happen? In theory, yes. Is it going to happen? Probably not, but I don't know. It might.